Welcome everyone. In this video, we'll go through the process of uploading, instantiating, and executing a smart contract on Injective. Next, I'll go through some products that I think you would all find useful in the Injective ecosystem, and also an overview of the docs. And third is an overview of the Injective SDKs that you can use to interact with the ecosystem. The first thing that I want to mention is the Injective Governance Forum. And I would recommend before you actually develop anything, you would post on what you're about to build, because based on community feedback and also feedback from us in the Injective Labs team, you might repurpose what you're building. And the process of uploading in Injective ecosystem is also permission. So that means that for you to upload and execute a smart contract, you would have to pass through governance, and you would have to request the vote from the community. And even if you don't really repurpose what you're building and everybody agrees with it, I think it's a good opportunity for you to present what you're building, connect with the community and the value add for Injective. That is at gov.injective.network, and I would recommend everybody engage this in the forum. With that being said, at docs.injective.network, that is the main documentation site for Injective. If you go under developer guides and colon was on Injective, you will find 4 sections. One is some general instructions on how to develop a smart contract. And the next remaining 3 are deployment guides on a local environment, Testnet, and Mainnet. The reason why you would want a local environment is if you want to make some custom changes on the chain, because there's a script that basically set up a local Injective chain. And if you're familiar with Cosmos, maybe you want to change the consensus parameter, let's say the voting period, because you want to submit a governance proposal that has to pass quite faster and also vote for it. Or another use case might be that you want to have IBC communication. So you would set up the Injective chain through this guide, and then you would also set up another Cosmos chain, and your smart contract will interact with both. But if you don't really need any of this, I would recommend deploying on Testnet, because Testnet is a replica of Mainnet, and it's the best environment for you to test before you deploy on Mainnet. So we have concrete instructions on everything, but I'll go through them right now and just copy paste to explain a few things. So I've just cloned the repo and set it into the directory. And next I'm going to run this command, which basically is going to build the artifacts of the CW plus repo. If you're running on an M1 Mac device, you can just copy this command, but I'm not, so I'm just gonna copy this. And keep in mind that if you use M1 Mac, the file, the naming of the files is going to be different. So in my case, it's CW20_base. That was in your case, if you use M1, it's going to be this notation, and the same for all the other contracts. I'm just gonna use the most basic contract, which is basically creating a CW20 token, and then I'm going to transfer to another address. So as soon as this is finished, we're going to download the Injective core image. We've published a version, which is the v1.10.1, which is the latest binary that we have. And you can just use these to experiment. But even if we use a different binary on Testnet, the upload command is not likely to change, but if it does, we'll always update the docs. So I'm just going to run this. What you would have to change is, as it says here, the directory to which you've cloned. And how you can find that is either running pwd. So in my case, it's /root/cosmos/cw ++. Okay. Let me just change it to the text editor, and then I'm just going to copy it. Started it before, so we're just going to stop it. So what this will do is create the injective code container and just keep it running indefinitely, so we can actually exec into it and run our commands. So this is going to be running, and then you can have a second window where you can just SSH in there, exec in there, sorry. If you use an M1 build, you should use the ARM image. So we have the normal one and also the M1 image. So now we're in the injective code container, and everything that we do, it won't really affect your environment. So the moment you're done, you can just delete the container and be done with it. So the next step is to install some dependencies and then create a key, because you have to sign to every command that you execute. I'm just going to name this test user, but you can just put any name that you want to. You have to put a passphrase. We're going to put 1 to 8 for simplicity. And you don't really need to copy the mnemonic phrase, but if you intend to reuse this key, or you can also decide, instead of creating a key, to import the key, you can actually do that, but I'm not really going to keep it. The next step is to export the INJ address, so we can use it through an environment variable. So I'm just going to do that. And then we would go to the faucet to request funds to this address. So if you go here, you can just put the injective address, submit, and then you would receive INJ tokens to pay for gas, among other things. But that is the only thing that you need to upload the contract. Okay, so that's done. You can check if you receive the funds either through the Explorer or through Swagger. I'll go on Swagger because I also want to show other functionalities that you can find here. So in our case, we just want to create a balance, which we can do here. And we can see that we received a lot of denoms. These are token factory denoms created natively on the injective chain, INJ, and also some Ethereum denoms that have been bridged over to injective. But Swagger is generally quite useful. Everything that is here is on-chain queries, and you can actually set by module. Exchanges are native module. So if you want to search Cosm WASM, you can just search for WASM, and you can generally find a lot of queries that can be helpful, and also in Cosmos modules like Gov, and so on. So the next step is to actually upload one of the contracts that was compiled in our first step. So everything that we're going to do, we have it commented here, but everything we're doing moving forward is within the container. So I'm just going to upload the contract. So the node argument is for you to use a remote node to upload. Otherwise, you would have to run a testnet node. The gas prices you would never change. This is the minimum value for both testnet and mainnet. And the gas, I would recommend leaving it to this value. It's set to 20 million. And previously, I've seen contracts that cost from 2 to 10 million gas. So I've set it to 20, and it's going to work for all. And gas is quite cheap right now. I think it's 0.01 INJ even for 20 million. So it's not actually that expensive. And this argument is a chain ID. For testnet, it's injective -888. For mainnet, it's injective -1. So for testnet, we just use 888. And this is the directory we mounted in the Docker container that contains the compiled contract. So we're getting a similar output to this. We can query the transaction with this command. And we can see that it was indeed uploaded, and you can see the contract. Keep in mind that, as I said, it is permissioned for mainnet, but permissionless for testnet, just for easier testing. So in this case, for mainnet, you wouldn't be able to upload the contract, and you would have to pass through governance. So given that we uploaded, the next step would be to find the code ID of the contract so we can actually instantiate it. That is here. As you can see, the code ID of my contract is 525. So I'm just going to export that in an environment variable as well. And Okay, so we have it. And then we would actually want to instantiate the contract. So that is the 1 to 8 is the passphrase that I added for my key. If you added another one, just change that. And the init is the argument that this contract needs. Of course, for your own contract, it's going to be different, but for mine, it's just to initiate this CW20 contract. So it has balances, symbol, and so on. So in my case, I'm just going to copy this. The parameters here have already been explained, apart from the no admin command, which basically means that if you want to set an admin, that means you can modify the contract. You could also modify it through governance, but if you want to set an explicit injective address that can modify this contract, basically migrate to a new one, you would set that here. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it. Okay, so we can create this one as well. Right, so it was instantiated indeed. And then we can move to the next one. There are also instructions here that you can find the contract on the Explorer, or you can use other APIs to create, which is something that we can do. So we can see that the code ID is 525. You can see the block height at which it was instantiated on, and we can see the creator address, which is our key. So now we're going to create the data from the contract. And yeah, you get a similar output to this. It's not really useful, but you can see that it worked at least. And now the next step is to create the user balances. So we can see that it's actually 0, which shouldn't be the case because we actually hard coded the injective address. So you can actually change that. I'm going to change that now to our own address. We can use the injective keys. So test user. Okay, so now it works because we minted 69,420. And yeah, as you can see, that is also the output. And then the next step is for you to transfer the tokens from that address to a different one. So we're setting the recipient to a random address, and then we're just executing the contract to transfer 420 to that address. And the rest of the commands, I'll already explained, it's the same. So we're just copying this and executing. We can also create a transaction as always. Okay, and then we can confirm that the transfer occurred by making this query. Okay, so it's 69,000 because we actually transferred the 420, and now we can also query the recipient. But actually, the recipient, yes, it's this address and it's 420. So everything worked, and we basically went through the process of uploading, instantiating, and executing a smart contract. For Mainnet, there's something worth mentioning is that in terms of gas that I mentioned, you should put 20 million. There's a max gas per block, which is set to 30 million. So you can't actually put more than 30. And given that we already have transaction blocks, you could probably put a maximum of 25, which should be enough for a single contract. And if you have multiple contracts that you have to upload, then there's also a functionality in the WASM-X module. So instead of WASM, in the XWASM module, as you can see here, there's also a bad store code proposal where you can upload multiple contracts, but keep in mind the gas limitation. So if your contracts are 3 or 4 and they cost 2 million each, that is totally fine, and you can upload them all in once, which would be best because you know, if you make full governance proposal for the same deployment, it wouldn't really make sense. But if gas is not enough, you could also reach out to us, because there are also some whitelisted addresses that we can use and bypass governance if you have a lot of contracts, and we can help out with that. For the mainnet deployment, the process is the same, but instead of WASM upload, you would use the gov module, and you would submit a proposal for a WASM store. And the commands, the rest of the commands are the same, and you can just follow these instructions. So the next step is to go through the products. So the most important I find to be the hub. So the Injective Hub has a lot of functionalities, primarily the wallet, where you can transfer funds on chain. So you can see the balances that you have, you can transfer to other addresses. Here you can see staking related information, which you don't really need for testnet. And also the bridge, where you can actually bridge tokens from multiple chains, IBC-enabled chains, Ethereum, Solana, and more. Governance, options, trust funds, and staking. But I think the most important one to mention is the wallet, because you might want to transfer funds to different addresses through the UI. You can consider the hub as kind of the gateway to Injective. The next one is the Explorer, where you can actually see blogs, transactions, and important information about contracts. So what we did is uploaded the Injective test contract, which we can also find here. And you can find valuable information in the details. Yeah, we can see our address and the amount that we actually minted. And you can also see here the executions, the actual transfer that we did for the 420 after the minting. And here you can see the code IDs for the contracts. So we first upload the code ID, and then we instantiate the contract. And yeah, here you can see some markets that are present to testnet, and some assets, basically everything that is supply on chain. The next product is the Helix app. So that is an exchange built on top of Injective, and you would find markets to trade on. But if you're just dealing with calling WASM deployments, you wouldn't really need that. So that is all for products too. The faucet that we went through is testnet.faucet.injective.network. And something important to note is that the mainnet products just are the same. You would just have to remove the testnet directive. So if you go to faucet.injective.network, actually this way that's testnet, but if we go to helixapp.com instead of testnet.helixapp.com, you would find the mainnet deployment. So that is all for products as well. And the next place is the Injective docs. We actually went through this for the deployment under the guides, but you can find a lot of useful information. And one important one is the endpoints. So for testnet, we have them in the guide, but for mainnet, if you want to deploy a contract as soon as it's ready, you could use this RPC mentioned here. And you can also find other useful APIs, Swagger that I mentioned and we went through, and also reading about chain modules, I think is quite useful and valuable. Here in core, you can see the Cosmos SDK module that are kind of the same across every Cosmos chain. And here you can see the bespoke modules that are on Injective. I would recommend reading everything throughout the docs. And the next one is the API documentation. So that is mainly tailored for market makers, but we also explain a lot of other concepts. You would want to go through the instructions when installing the clients, the Python, Golang, and TypeScript. We have 3 SDKs that I'm actually going to also show the repos. And I think it would be the best place to interact with Injective. There's also an overview page that explains certain concepts and also important information on matching. So we have examples on how matching would work for market orders, for limit orders, and so on. And the examples are quite simplistic. So if you would want to use an example, you could just copy paste the entire example and just run it. And we can see response samples here. So that's it for the API docs as well. And as I mentioned, we have 3 SDKs, one in TypeScript, one in Go, and one in Python. For TypeScript, there's also a wiki page that explains how it's structured and also a lot of concepts. So if you're using the TypeScript SDK or if you intend to use it, I would definitely recommend going through this wiki page first. And there are also a lot of examples on how to utilize it. And yeah, here's the Go SDK at Injective Labs or SDK Go. And here is the Python one. So for Python and also for all other SDKs, you would want to refer to the API doc examples that I mentioned or the wiki page. If you don't find support for the method that you want to use, let's say that there's a method store, you want to upload a contract for the SDK and one SDK doesn't have support for that and you want to use it. What you can do is basically go into, for Python at least, into PyInjective and in the proto file, in the proto folder, and you can see the proto definitions per module. So here you have the injective modules. We also have Cosmos. So let's say that you want to add support for a method, as we mentioned, the method store code. So you can see the spec here, the things that are required, and just follow what we've done for the other methods in other modules. So where you would go for that is 2 places. One is the async client and the other one is the composer. You can think the async client as all the methods, all the read methods, and the composer, all the write methods. So all the queries would be in the async client and all the messages would be in the composer. So if you go in the async client, you can actually add more queries and just follow the examples that we have. They're quite simple, and I think they're generally easy to use. Okay, I think that was it. And as soon as you're done with the container, you can just exit and just stop and remove the container. And everything we did, it just won't stay on your local. And that's really enough. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Thank you.